who used to be always with us. And no doubt that the assessment of animal welfare using a scoring system has advanced quickly, laying the grounds for creating dependable metrics and indicators to examine how different animal management system impacts their essential welfare requirements. When establishing a welfare recommendation, it is important, of course, to consider not only the internationally recognized 5 freedoms and the extent of the impairment of functioning due to the injury, due to the injury or disease or malnutrition, but also factors such as the preference, motivation, and aversion of animals. Additionally, it's crucial to take into account the physiological behavior and the immunological changes or effects that animals display in response to various challenges. It's crucial also to note that improvement in farm animal welfare not only have a positive impact on productivity or food safety and economic benefits, but also emphasize and underscore the ethical responsibility to ensure that and maintain the welfare needs of these animals. In our region, dromedary camel are significant source of food and entertainment, as you know. The population of dromedary camels has been steadily increasing due to improved veterinary care and the introduction of modern farming and management system. However, there is a limited availability of science-based information about camel-specific welfare standards, and further efforts are needed to improve the understanding and assessment of the particular needs of this species. Certainly, this will contribute to improve and maximize the production potential of camel within the framework of animal welfare principles. And also, as the Dr. Badalino said, that we need also to coordinate with each other as professionals to make developing camel welfare standards easy in getting information, in getting data, or in engaging in this activity. So as we can contribute, all of us, to development of camel sector in our region. Today, we are honored to have also Dr. Barbara joining us. She is a distinguished scientist who has dedicated significant time and effort researching camel welfare. Dr. Badalino is a primary author of the protocol for scoring the welfare status of dromedary camels, published by Animal Angels, an internationally recognized organization. During her presentation, Dr. Badalino will discuss the assessment of dromedary camel welfare and other welfare parameters related to the evaluation of welfare standards at the farm level. Background about Dr. Badalino. Dr. Badalino graduated in the veterinary medicine at the University of Bari, Italy, and completed her PhD at the University of Sydney, Australia. She is an associate professor of animal science at the University of Bologna, Italy, and a member of the Animal Health and Welfare Panel of the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA. Her research interests span several welfare areas, from camel behavior and welfare to equine internal and sport medicine. Barbara has written more than 200 publications in peer-reviewed international journals and conferences proceedings on those topics. She is currently leading several research projects aiming at enhancing animal health and welfare worldwide. And before Barbara start, I invite you to open your cameras for a group photo if you are interested, and for the documentation of this activity, to be thankful for you, if you open your camera and to take the group photo for the webinar. Nobody seems interested.
No, it's coming. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks. Hi, Ahmed, Ibrahim, thanks. Okay, Mahdi. Thanks.
Two more, Hamed? Yeah.
Because we are very keen that this attendance must be when we have also an active discussion after the presentation.
We're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mahdi. And now, Patalino, the floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah, I'll share. Just a moment, I want to close. Okay,
Yes.
Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, so
The presentation mode. Okay.
is in presentation mode?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you, everyone, and it's a pleasure for me to be here and sharing with you, like, my experience assessing dromedary camel around the world, and I hope we can clearly discuss together after this informal chat. We are a small group of friends, and many of you have even helped me in this work, so I'm happy to, really have an interactive section if it's possible. So I don't have to tell you why dromedary camels are important. I think in the Gulf area, you are particularly attached. Also, it's, an inherited animal, and why we have so much interest in camels outside the Gulf area, just because really these are unique animal, and they have been named the animal of the future, the livestock of the future, also because if we keep neglecting the planet, we really are going to be exposed to so higher temperature that other livestock might not survive, or they can not be productive anymore. So I think the farming of dromedary camels could be something that is going to be developed also in other area of the world. But, we really know that health, production, and welfare are important. So we cannot just focus on research on milk or meat or all the product that we can have from dromedary camel. We really need to make sure those animals are in a good welfare condition so that everyone is happy and it's a win-win situation. So the number of publication in the years, they're clearly increasing, but however, the number of publications related to welfare are still not enough. And this is why I am going to invite you to do more research on camel welfare. And it's also important to point that there are no welfare standards for dromedary camel, and we will never be able to even propose evidence-based welfare standard if we don't have data. So just a quick reminder, so we know that welfare is the quality of life of the animal, the welfare status of the animal from the first day when they're born until they die, and welfare science is pushing to have a method to measure welfare in a scientific way, also because we say that if we don't measure, we cannot improve. So it's really important that we, we apply standard protocols to assess welfare, because as we said in the first webinar, if we have reliable welfare indicator and the same welfare protocol, then our data are comparable. And this is one of the aims which I would like to do today. So Just a quick reminder, and clearly when we speak of a life worth living, we need to consider the view of the animal as not what we think is right or wrong for the animal. So as Rick said before, we really need to spend time to understand what animals prefer and try to assess like what they feel from their own eyes in a scientific way. This is why I use the thermal camera. So we really need to try to use even new technologies to do this job. And I want to also remind you that a dromedary camel is a dromedary camel. It doesn't matter if it's kept for milk, meat, and or racing. Basically, what the animal needs and prefer is going to be the same because, as I said, a dromedary camel is a dromedary camel. So let's try really to have a brainstorming on what really do dromedary want and what dromedary prefer. So, you know, when we spoke about welfare, I told you that Professor Dawkins said that, so to really be sure that animal is in a good welfare condition, we needed to make sure we give them what they need and what they want. So, as always, I invite you to participate. So, can you think about, and using the chat, can you write what do camels need and what do camels want? So please use the chat, don't be shy. So I'll start saying camels. There is not a wrong or right question or answer, so please just participate just to break the ice. So Patrick said, as a needs, they need food and water. Someone else having some idea? Ali said space, shade, and water, and Ali pointed out that shade is a need and not a preference. Ahmed said medication.
I would like to add to exhibit normal behavior.
Yeah, okay. So they want to be able to express normal behavior. Okay, so now let's move on. Thank you for your contribution. So what do you think? Is this good welfare? Yes, no, I don't know. And what would you, and how you would argument your position? So this is a dromedary camel. It is in his natural environment, so definitely is free to express his normal behavior. However, it's by himself. And it does look a bit skinny to me. What do you think? Is this good welfare? Yes, no, I don't know. Please write in the chat. No one? Okay. So ribs are seen clearly, but it looks happy. Tariq say. Patrick said space, yes, no shade. Okay, let's have a look. These are other situation. What about this one? So these are in a group, Arcanosea ribs, and they also have access to different sorts of feed. So they, camels are browsing and grazing animals, but they like also eating from tree. So Tariq said, well nurtured. Ahmed said, yes, this is a good welfare.
I mean nourished, they are well fed.
Good.
Commit a spelling mistake.
Yeah, no, that's good. And what about the last one? Look at this. So this is a dromedary camel. Everyone said that they are so aggressive animal that no one can tame them. And this is just a young boy actually cuddling the dromedary camels. So is this good welfare? No, I don't know. Any input from the audience? Yes, no, I don't know. So I'm sorry always that I always try to trick you, because then I show you some pictures and then I ask you what you believe, but definitely the right answer is I don't know, because we cannot really assess welfare from a picture, and this is something that we should always remember. And when people see a single situation and call competent authority because they're certain that the animal are in sufferance and pain, probably as a competent authority you are going to struggle a bit, because again a single picture doesn't say much, and every time you must go and visit the animal and try to assess the behavior, the emotion of the animal, and clearly also the health and the body condition and so on, because welfare is right in the middle. So how actually, so we can assess welfare when you go somewhere and you have to write a report and in a case of neglecting dromedary, for instance. So clearly, we have the 5 freedom that Tariq was mentioning at the beginning. That is the start of welfare, but clearly it's a paradigm, it's a philosophy. It doesn't give us any indicators, basically. So this is why in the story, or currently in the literature, you are going to have those 2 major frameworks, the 5 domains, which has been created by David Meller, and which basically highlight the mental states, and probably gives lots of weight to the mental states and the emotion of the animal, and I think that's correct. And the welfare quality, which instead use these 4 principles: good feeding, good housing, good health, and good behavior, and give you some criteria and lots of indicators. So the difference is probably that I really like the 5 domains, but I think we still need to work a bit more on scoring or looking at positive welfare indicators. Instead, the welfare quality is a bit more objective and probably easy to do. And this is why basically in the last, I would say now, probably 6-7 years, I tried to develop some protocols to assess the welfare of dromedary camel. And I basically amend the welfare quality protocol, adapting it to dromedary camels. So the first protocol, which I developed, this is the publication, which is a free publication, is open access, is basically a method to assess the welfare of dromedary camel kept in intensive and semi-intensive husbandry system. So basically where actually, you know, the horses, the camels are limited in space, and they often do not have the possibility to graze around. These will be the criteria to really understand intensive and semi-intensive. And is a method which is based on 3 levels of investigation. So there is one initial interview that you have to do to the farmer or the caretaker, and then there is some group level assessment. So you assess mainly where the group of animals, the animals are living, and then some animal-based assessment. It takes about 1 hour to do one farm, depending really on how big are the farm and how many pens in the same farm you want to assess or you have to assess. And this is a booklet that with the help of Animal Angels we publish, and this is the QR code that, so if you want to assess it directly, or you can easily find online. I think it's also on the WOAH website. And basically, like, you know, we just transformed the paper, which is a scientific paper, a bit more difficult, in a user-friendly manner. And, you know, I don't want to go today in explain you the method, because we had already one presentation last year. I want to just say about when we apply it. We apply it in Qatar, in a market, and the beauty of this standard protocol is that, as I said, we are able to measure. So we were actually able to measure the welfare of all the camels kept in a different pen at the market, and these are our results. So we were able to classify and compare, and as you can see, basically these are the results of our first assessment in Qatar. It's you can see that the majority of the pens had camel with an unsatisfactory welfare condition. But, you know, the beauty of this method is that we can also see where are the problems. So looking, for instance, at this pen, you can see that the score for the housing was actually really low, and also the feeding. And this is why these pens ended up in the unsatisfactory category. But why do I really like this method? Because for us, it was really easy to then do also, like, you know, some risk analysis and try to understand what were the risk factor, what were the hazard for the welfare of the animal, and first of all, what could we suggest? So basically, we saw that the body condition score, like, you know, was affected by the feeding space, or when the animal had no space enough, then when the bedding was dirty, and when clearly, like, you know, there was some disease. So regarding the resting behavior, again, similar. So there was a clear association with the caretaker experience. So more experienced people were able to keep the animal better, so that, like, the animal could actually show resting behavior, rumination in resting, which is, you know, a good indicator of welfare. But clearly, like, you know, you can see again that when the bedding was dirty, the animal were not resting, and clearly that makes sense, because no one like lying down in a dirty bed, no? Why dromedary camels should be different. And again, we also found that clearly, like, you know, the animals that had limited water tended to have more disease. And this is also clear because we know that dehydration is a risk factor for all disease. And also their behavior was worse when the animal had less feeding space, less shade, and less water. And I wonder, like, that's also normal. Like, you know, if we are hungry, thirsty, and we have not slept well, we also get more nervous, isn't it? So based on this evidence, we were able to suggest how to improve the market. And this is why I'm really proud to say that the Ministry of Qatar was really receptive. And they actually liked our assessment because so we could give the evidence and we could also give suggestion. And we clearly said that the animal needed to have more shade, have more space. They didn't really need to be hobbled or like, you know, roped. And this is why when we did the second assessment, even if we like, you know, we have still not done a proper assessment for a bit of lack of time and probably also source, then, but you can already see in this picture how like, you know, everything has been improved and how like, you know, the camels can actually like be free to move around, they have more space and they have more feeding space and the water is always available, even licking salts are available. So this is just to give you an idea of when we measure welfare, we are able to give evidence-based recommendation. So welfare is actually a way to improve the welfare condition of the animal based on evidence. So, however, you know better than me, the majority of the dromedary camels live in extensive or pastoralism or nomadic situation. This is why, like, you know, we also spend a bit more time to actually try to develop a method that was specific for dromedary kept under pastoralism. And that this has been published this year. It's again freely accessible. And what is the difference? It's clearly like, you know, based on the literature and clearly the previous protocol, but clearly we have here the problem that those animals do not have a fixed pen where they live, they change every day. So basically we combine the caretaker and the group level. And so now this protocol has only 2 levels of investigation. And we also simplify a bit this, the number of indicators. So this protocol has only 44 welfare indicators in total. And today I want to share with you my experience in Pakistan. So with the colleagues that I will already acknowledge from Pakistan, we applied this protocol and we were able to assess 54 herds for a total of 1,186 camels and in 2023. So clearly, like, you know, as I said, I need to thank my colleagues because they did the hard job to really organize everything, speak with the farmer, making sure that the farmer were happy with us to assess the welfare. And then clearly, like Patrick and I flew to Pakistan and then we assessed the welfare. As I said, again, it's an easy method because it's feasible. So there are not expensive equipment, some weather stations, some meter, some stopwatch, and then the recording sheet. The recording sheet are published in the article in Frontier, so you can easily see it. And again, you have basically, as the other one, like, you know, some question to ask to the caretaker, the owner, the shepherd, whatever you want to call it. And they are already split by principle. So clearly for the feeding, we've asked how long they can graze and if water is available and how often they water the animal. For the environment, we ask about the composition of the herd. And for the health, we put questions related, you know, on the vaccination. As some of you, they said that the animal needs medication. So we also ask who is administered these medication. And again, for the behavior, we also ask about the experience because we know, as I showed you before, that the experience of the manager of the herd is a risk factor for the welfare of the animal. And instead, for the animal level, you have this recording sheet. It takes around 5-6 minutes per camel, so it's not too long. I've done a 500 by myself, so I can tell you it's really feasible. And again, you have, it's a clear stuff because you have for each principle indicators and even a score. And as the other one, then when you have all your score, there are only 2 recording sheets, so it's not really difficult. You can calculate the partial index, and again, we publish all the calculation. So you just transform the score from, you know, all of these 0202 in hundreds %. Then you aggregate. In this case, clearly you aggregate only by principle, and then you can have the total welfare score. So having a look at the situation in Pakistan, so you can see that the majority of the animal had access at least for 10-12 hours to the pasture. They were usually watered at least once a day. And I have to admit that I was surprised because Pakistan is much more green than what I was expecting. And actually they have some natural source where the shepherd used to bring the dromedary at least once a day there, or sometimes what I really like, they actually built some resting point where water and shade are available. And regarding the housing, so the majority of the camels used to live in group of less than 30, which is, you know, more closer to what is the natural behavior of the camels. Looking at the health, when we ask if, who was checking the health of the animal, you can see that the majority were non-veterinarian. So they often were treated by non-veterinarian, and they were vaccinated. That's already good, and the worm. But again, you know, the presence of veterinarian is not really high in Pakistan. And regarding the behavior, the majority of those people had a great experience also because it's a kind of familiar stuff. So when a kid is born, has already one camel, so it's clearly it passed generation by generation, but mainly by traditions. And have a look at the animal level. So basically, when we assess the animal, so the majority of the animal had actually food available, so they were grazing, so there was some green, but water was not really available. So we have to believe that at least once a day those animals have watered. And I want to point you out that the majority of these animals had a body condition score of 2. So still not ideal, but not even too skinny or too obese. The case of, of a really cachectic animal, you can see they were really rare. Regarding the housing, the majority of them, when we did the assessment, had no shade. Some others were lucky, and they had also some natural shade. However, all around was clean, and there was not much risk of injuries. There were no many ectoparasites. I was actually surprised by that. And the camels, in general, they were clean or partially clean. They were often not tethered and sometimes restrained, but I have to admit that probably our presence make them restrained too. So these could be even less than what I'm showing. And the same hobblers also were really rare. So I think for me, this is important because these are pastoralism, and we keep using hobblers even in pens. So if in Pakistan they are able to keep dromedary free without hobblers and constraint, why should we actually restrain animals in a pen, which is already restricted? Sorry for the deviation, but that's me thinking while I'm talking with you. And for the health, my general feeling is this animal were looking quite fit. Clearly, we had skin disorder, which, with CAMENET, we actually raised it as a welfare concern everywhere. So we definitely need to do something more for the skin disorder of camels. And they still used a lot of pain-induced management, especially lots of branding for identification. And this is because in Pakistan, there is not enforced identification of the animal through microchip. And due to the fact that there is no identification, basically there were no record keeping. So I probably skipped this information before, but no one could tell me, you know, how much was the mortality rate of the morbidity rate, because sometimes they even didn't know how many camels they had. So clearly you cannot keep any record if you don't identify your animal. And we have better way today that's, you know, branding. And again, lots of categorization, because by tradition, we still believe that we need to fire animal to cure them. Instead, you know, we know that this is not the case. For the behavior, you can see that the majority of these animals were living in group, so they show some positive interaction, and really, I have not seen any aggressive and any stereotypes, like, you know, the incidence of stereotypy is 0.4 and 2% of aggressive behavior in those animals. So I would say that this is a proof that dromedary camels are not so aggressive, even if they are free, and they, you know, they're even not restrained by hobblers on everything. And the majority of them, you know, they were really easy to approach. The majority were positive, were sniffing us back. They were, you know, easy to pat and cuddle. So if I show you a bit more stats, you can see that there is a difference between the caretakers, or what the caretaker data were, and the animal level, and in particular in good health, because as I said, at the animal level, the animal looked okay, apart the skin disorder. However, you know, it is true that basically they have no vets checking them, and they often, you know, they cannot be treated because vets are not available. And again, for the good housing, like, you know, often they don't have a rest point, or they cannot really, like, you know, they are not safe. So some animals die because of predators. When you look at the partial index aggregated, you can see that definitely good health and good behavior were the highest. So those animals were fit and really free to express the natural behavior. We still have some issues, like, you know, in the housing and in the feeding. But, you know, this is normal, because we know that if they live on a pasture base, we have the strong seasonal effect. So clearly, when it's drought, do you remember when I explained you about the one welfare approach? If we have you know, increase in heat wave, increase in you know, flooding or disaster, the living condition outside, even if more natural, they can be challenged for the welfare of those animals. And clearly the availability of the food in a desertic area is really connected with how much rain and how much you know, heat and the quality of the soil. So, however, overall, if we look at the classification of the herds in Pakistan, you can see that, you know, the number do not lie. The majority of these herd had a satisfactory, you know, welfare of the animal. So opposite to what was the first score in Qatar. And when we also did some stats, then we realized that, yeah, the good feeding was, you know, the parameter which affected the classification the most. And I explained you already why, because clearly living only on pasture can really, you know, limit the accessibility of the food and also affect the body condition of those animals. So what was our conclusion of the work done in Pakistan? The camel had a better level of welfare compared to those reported in the literature for intensive system. However, the study identify some critical point, and it was still possible to suggest best practice for improving herds with the criticalities. In terms of nutrition, poor water availability and variable feeding practice were highlighted as areas needing attention. Regarding good housing, the lack of shade and overnight staying place were identified as a risk factor. And regarding good health, the pastoralist stated that non-veterinarian treated their camels, a lack of identification and record keeping were highlighted. So what were our recommendations? It would be good if a more resting and shelter point could be built along the common pastoralist way, so that camels could be watered, shaded, and rested at night, and when temperature above their thermal neutral zone. And this area could be also good because they could provide vet tech assistance to improve the welfare of the camels in Pakistan. And also from the business perspective, you know, it would be easy to milk all the camels in this resting point and then sell the, you know, the milk. So, you know, the guy who's collecting milk has not to go around, but he has one point, gets the milk, and then the milk also gets, you know, pasteurized, or also like, you know, cool straight away. So it would be much also better for the food safety if we want to just touch base also on the food. And again, so minimal welfare standard for dromedary camels should be implemented, clearly not only in Pakistan, but worldwide, using evidence. So now I'll show you the situation in Qatar and Pakistan. Can you think about what are the most relevant welfare issues in your country? So if you can use the chat and you could just write quickly, you know, your country and what you think a welfare issue. Don't be shy. So I'll do so that at least you don't get bored. So just listen to me. You can also talk if it's easy instead of writing in English, which could be an issue. So don't be shy. It's okay. You can also, you know, turn on your mic and talk.
Barbara, when we are speaking about feeding camels, and is it the quantity or the quality of the feed? Because, you know, camels sometimes there is different nutritional needs for camels. But so the feed to satisfy the criteria, welfare criteria, has to be nutritious and also
they need to be both. So with the good feeding, we say that there's still the diet has to be appropriate. So we need to meet the nutritional requirement, definitely. But at the same time, we should try to also cover the feeding behavior. So giving them the opportunity to chew at least 10, 12 hours a day, and then I have time to ruminate. So between chewing and rumination, they should be able. And this is, I'm saying, because that means they still need a fiber-based diet. So yeah, definitely feeding could be an issue in one sense, because it could be not appropriate on the pasture because there is not enough to meet the requirement. And on the opposite, I saw animals feeding, lots of concentrating in the racing industry or even in the breeding sector, that they develop stereotypy because they get all the nutrition in 1 hour and they get bored because they need to chew. So any other suggestion about, so Morocco handling and transportation issue, Ali said. Okay, and actually Ali is giving me a good lead for the next topic. Definitely, I agree that transport is a welfare issue. And this is another nice publication of Animal Angels on their investigation on transport in the Middle East. And I want to also acknowledge that so part of the next slide are actually some of the work that Ali shared with me. So touching base on transport, why dromedary camel are transported? As every animals, they will at least travel one day in their life to go to the slaughter. But actually, you know, camels, we move a camel for racing, for beauty competition, but also during the breeding. So they actually are more similar to horses. They actually travel a lot more than a cattle or a sheep. And where they go? They go everywhere. So they can move on a short distance in the same country, but also they might also be subjected to long distance. Also, for instance, just even for slaughter in Egypt, they actually tend to receive camels from Sudan and Somalia, or in the Gulf area, you know, you need to import. And there was some camels that actually has been sold to Saudi Arabia from Pakistan. So they actually travel even by air when it is more for milking or beauty or breeding improvement. So they really travel a lot. And how they travel? So like all farm animal, you know, it sometimes depends on your luck. So there are some camels that there are racing camels or beauty camels, they're really valuable. And so they are transported in the best way. Some other, they are less fortunate. They are just meat camels and they are transported really badly. And I want to point you that it's not the journey in itself. This is the welfare issues, but the welfare conditions. So it's not even the duration, but the welfare condition protracted for a long time when we speak about transport. So, and clearly, yeah, we have some issues and lots of issues are related to inappropriate handling, inappropriate vehicles, lack of loading ramp. Camels are not really different from horses, so they don't really need to be picked up. So they can walk if actually we give them the right ramp. And so these are clearly some evidence. So usually the major problem are unsuitable transport vehicle, non-designed for the transport of animal to start with. It's the same truck that people use to do whatever, and then they say, okay, let's put a dromedary camel on it. And so they often do not have loading ramp because they are just truck and not transport approved for animal transportation. They don't have no weather protection, no roof, and clearly often no water accessibility. So it's not surprising that we have a problem with injuries, pain, heat, and stress. And the other problem is often the restraint methods, because often camels need to be restrained, but again, it's not the restraint itself, but how you do it. So often, you know, just the nylon or really thin cord are used, but instead you could use much better material. These are real pictures. I remember, like, you know, in this nice track, there was all, you know, she camels for breeding, and they were all transported with good restrainment material. And the other issues is definitely the loading density. So this is the WOAH standard, which is actually the only chapter on camels that we could refer as a possible regulation or indication. So it's that when animals lie down, they should be able to adopt a normal lying position without on top of it, one of another, and allowing necessary thermoregulation. You can see from this picture that that is against the WOAH standard, and this is the, you know, the common reality. I mean, I've seen, like, you know, camels really that went struggling to be loaded, not because they were aggressive, but the camel could see there was no space enough, like in this situation. Where should, you know, the camel go? And clearly, like, you know, we need space around the animal for thermoregulation, because, you know, they really need to breathe, and, you know, wind needs to be, to go between and among camels. Another standard of WOAH is when appropriate, suitable bedding should be added to vehicle floor to assist absorption of urine and feces, protect the animals. And these are clearly like, different situation. Like, often they are transported without any bedding. So it's not surprising that then you will have injuries, sleeping, extra pain, and also respiratory problems by, the ammonia of the urine. And clearly, again, some racing or beauty camels, instead, they are transported with lots of, rugs or even bedding. So it's not possible. Is that we do only for valuable animal, but the welfare is the same, not depending on the category of the animal. And again, other responsibility, the welfare of animal during the journey is the paramount consideration and is the joint responsibility of all the people involved, the WOAH say. And again, all people responsible for animal during journey should be competent in accordance with the responsibility. But instead, what the angels show in the report is that the majority of those people are not competent. They don't know really how to handle dromedary camels. Too often, they are afraid of dromedary camels because, they're big animal, they have this belief they are super aggressive animals. And this is why often they have no clue even how to load those animals. And often this generates really violence because of the frustration and the fear that these handlers have of the dromedary camels. And so it's not surprising that we have injury and pain inflicted on those animals. And again, the WOAH said all animal must be fit for transport. So we need to check the animal before the loading, and they need to be fit and healthy. But unfortunately, this is not the common situation. Actually, lots of unfit animals are actually sold for slaughter. So they are absolutely not fit for transport before the journey. And actually, this is the reason why they are traveling. And this clearly, it's a matter of competent authorities that needs to be checked a bit more. So I want to just really touch base on this study because I'm going over time, just to go through you, but really quickly. So I want to show you this study that we did in Cairo at the market in Cairo, just to show you, what I said. So really, the welfare of the animal depends on the human factor, because we decide whatever it's the life of those animals. So we did a questionnaire, and also this article is going to be published shortly in Journal of Camel Science. And we just ask the background and the knowledges of welfare, and then what problems the animal had. It was, we did an interview, actually Ali did the interview because I cannot speak Arabic. I just analyzed the data and create a question. And so we asked about the background, and we asked what is welfare for you? Now, the same question that I put in some of this webinar. We asked, how do you recognize pain in dromedary camels? How do you manage your camels, and if your camels have behavioral and health problems? And so what was our major identikit of the caretaker? They were men from Egypt. They were quite, all different ages. And they often were hired just for the loading, for the market day. So they were, again, not trained for, or even not ever seen, camels before, but just helping the market day. And clearly they had a low educational level. And they working at Cairo market for more than 5 years. They had experience with livestock, but the majority of them had long experience, but they learned by tradition. So they've seen other people handle animal in this way. So for them, it's normal to beat. And again, I'm not saying that, just say that, it's the reality. If you grow up in this situation, then you believe, you learn that that's the only way, because no one has shown you alternative. And again, they will often manage more than one pen together. So when we ask to them, what is welfare for you, you can see that the majority, they replied food, water, medicine. And however, like, for instance, appropriate behavior was less, or even good housing were less inserted in their answer, but the majority of them had no idea, the holistic idea of welfare, so that the animal need feeding, housing, good behavior, and good health. So basically, no one covered with their answer all the 4 principles. And okay, and then this is interesting. All of them were quite good in recognizing pain in animals. I guess this comes from experience. And so they ranked themselves really able to recognize a dromedary camel in pain. And the majority of them said that they were able to recognize from the eyes. So there are no really studies on pain and how to recognize pain, but there could be something on the facial expression as in other species. So who were those camels? They were mainly from Sudan and Somalia. They stayed at the camel really shortly. They usually were fed ad libitum, and water was also left ad libitum in a majority of the case. They were managed by the OVNA, and they were mainly not vaccinated, not dewormed, and they administer ectoparasites, and usually, they were cared directly by the OVNA if they were sick. And this is something that I want to highlight. So in Pakistan, as I said, less than 2% of animals showing aggressive behavior. Here, more than 60 caretakers said, yes, our animals were aggressive. We have problem with aggression behavior. But what we actually found is that the majority of those animals showing aggressive behavior, they were sick. So to me, this is a pain-induced aggression. If you beat me and I'm injured, I'm bleeding, possibly I will bite you. And this was what is one of our major results. So the majority of those animals had health issues, even pain health issues, injury, bleeding, respiratory problem, colic. So they were actually showing more aggressive behavior due probably the lack of fitness, that instead, as I said, in Pakistan, the majority of the animals were healthy. And what was the pathology? So the majority of the pathology that we found were respiratory problems or injury or overeating. And when we ask what could be the cause of all those pathology, you can see that the caretaker says, so the same people said travel condition and bad management. So they also acknowledge that there was something in the transport that make those animals sick. So what were the main conclusions? None of the caretakers had a complete view of what animal welfare is. Most of the caretakers said to recognize camel pain with a very high ability. Most of the camels were reported to have behavioral and health problem. Travel condition resulted as the most common cause of camel pathology. Again, our recommendation, education on camel and welfare is recommended for all people who handle and manage camel. Workshop on appropriate handling should be organized to increase camel-human relationship. Regulation on the protection and welfare of camel during transport should be implemented. Veterinarians and official veterinarians should be regularly on the market to treat the camels and protect their welfare. And the take-home message of today is that camel welfare, health, and production are interconnected. Camels in poor welfare condition will have low fertility rate, high morbidity and mortality rate, and their production will be of low quality and quantity. learn how to monitor and promote positive welfare will lead to happier camel and happier camel breeders. And I would just add, if we don't measure, we cannot improve. So let's thank the animal angels, which have been helping me also with funding those research, and clearly, like, all the colleagues that are helping me in collecting the data, and clearly also the camel farmer and all the camels which participate, and you for your attention. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara, to walk us through this long journey of wealth of information in camel welfare standards. It is really challenging to work to set the standard for camel welfare because the rearing system is different between intensive, semi-intensive, and extensive, and maybe there is some variation, in the needed measurement for each category of this, and also because as you said, that the ignorance in the part of the caretaker, and which I think put responsibility upon veterinarian and attendants, animal attendants, which is always in captivity, to play more effective role in crystallizing and also in exploring the camel welfare needs, and also to give helping hand to researchers and those who are working on this file.
Yeah,
okay.
no, I'm saying, as a veterinarian, when we graduated, we promised we were going to work to improve animal health and welfare in our job. So actually, veterinarian, it's our mission, and it's a key role. And too often we forgot the role of education. So I've been also in equine practitioners going around, from one horse to another, it's always busy. Check the horse and prescribe the medicine, and off I go. But no, our role is also spend time with the owner and explain them how to treat the animal properly. So this is why I think, any veterinarian, competent authorities, or just practitioner, clinician, we just need to, take our responsibility and spend time with the owner. When we see something wrong, show the people alternative. As I said, I'm not angry with the people, or that they do what they do, because they've seen this, they don't know. And if you grow up and you see the same thing, it's like, if you grow up in an Arabic country, you can speak Arabic. If you grow up in Italy, you speak Italian. So, our brain is a sponge when we're young. If they see only this, then they will keep doing. But it's our responsibility, it's our fault if we see things and we don't do anything to teach those people how to do better.
Yes. Our dear colleagues, the floor is open if anyone have a comment, if anyone has a comment or a question for Barbara. It's welcome. And Barbara, as we mentioned in our introduction, that because the camel is a candidate to play a role in the food security in the region, in milk production and meat also production, and respecting the welfare of camel will be reflected in the production potential, of course, and also will help a lot in reaching these objectives. For that, this is what add more responsibility and add more importance for application of the camel welfare standards, so as to be sure that the production is not affected by the poor commitment to this standard.
Look, For me, we know that there is a connection between transport, stress, and meat quality. So if the animal are transported in a poor welfare situation, so overcrowded and so on, and they beaten, they stress, they are in fear, the meat quality is going to be low and even dangerous, because there are some other study in other species, and we know that the animal are stressed by transport. There is basically a movement of Salmonella clostridiums in the meat. So actually, all those bacteria which live in the gut, but they are stopped by the gut. So when there is lots of stress, they easily migrated, and then basically it's a huge risk for food safety. So I think that if we don't want to do for the animal, we should do really for our own safety. As I said, with a one health and a one welfare approach, we know that there is a nexus.
Yes, of course, I'm completely with you that because I worked for slaughterhouse for a long period, I saw that stressed animal and stressed camels, that they always there is imperfect bleeding, there is insufficient bleeding, which makes the musculature retain a large quantity of blood, and which is lead also to bad keeping quality of meat, and also to condemnation.
Yeah, they're usually darker because there is the DFD meat. So quality is affected, and also the safety is affected.
They don't bleed well, and also this will also lead of losses, economical losses in the meat market.
Some people use hot iron tattoo for making camels. How does this affect?
Muhammad people use hot iron, tattoo.
Yeah, hot ironing, has been used in traditionals in other species, but now there are some evidence from other species that hot ironing doesn't really does any effect. So we have use a hot ironing or cauterization or whatever you want to call it, to increase the blood flow, and we think that it was curing faster. But you can see in the literature evidence that this doesn't work. It just basically affect pain to the animal, because branding is painful, and in particular when it's even not done through lidocaine and sedation, and actually doesn't work. So, and it's not really a good way. It's tradition, I guess, even like bleeding. I mean, if we look at the human medicine 200 years ago, those are the methods that doctors believe are working. So now we have the evidence, and we have definitely better clinical drugs or surgery methods to heal the animal properly.
Yes. Any question, colleagues? Or then we again, we are extremely thankful to you, Barbara, for your cooperation, for your pedagogic skills, really, and for rich and informative lectures on this
my pleasure.
important topic. This is a very, very important topic to our region. As we said, that welfare is correlated to the efficiency of production. Camel is a candidate for security, and we have to link things together so as to highlight the true importance and significance of camel welfare. And we are grateful to you and for your continuous cooperation, and looking forward also to meet you in coming occasions and coming webinars. Thanks a lot. Thanks that our colleague, the attendees, for your joining us, and we hope to see you in our upcoming webinars. Inshallah. Thanks.
Thank
and
you.
bye-bye.
Inshallah. Bye-bye.
Inshallah.